At my mother-in-law's birthday dinner, she gave expensive gifts to every child at the table, even the neighbors' kids. My daughter was the only one left with nothing. She looked down and said nothing, until my husband stood up, placed an envelope on the cake table, and said, "This gift is for all of you." What happened next made the whole room freeze. My name is Ivy Callahan. I am 34 years old. I am a paralegal who works in estate law in Harwick, Wisconsin, and I spend my days reading the documents families leave behind, the ones that say who mattered and who didn't, who gets the house and who gets the explanation. I know what a document means, and I know what a document is designed to hide. My mother-in-law had been hiding something for nearly a year. What she did not know, when she placed gift boxes in front of every child at that table except my daughter, was that the document she was hiding had already found its way to my desk drawer 3 months earlier. And I had been waiting. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and subscribe to Calm Life Stories, because what is in that envelope changes everything. I need to take you back to how this family worked before I can tell you what happened at that table. Leo and I met in our late 20s. He is the older of 2 sons. His brother Tanner is 3 years younger, married to a woman named Ashlyn, and between them they have 2 boys, Brody, who is 9, and Kit, who is 6. Leo and I have Della. Della is 7. She has her father's dark eyes and a habit of observing rooms very carefully before she decides whether to speak in them. She got that habit from somewhere. I have my suspicions about where. Leo's mother, Sylvia, has been the central operating force in the Mercer family since before I entered it. She is 62. She hosts every holiday, organizes every birthday, sets every seating chart, and manages the rhythm of family events the way a conductor manages an orchestra, not because she loves the music, but because she needs to control which instrument plays loudest at any given moment. She is very good at this. She has been doing it her entire adult life. Leo's father, Warren, has been married to Sylvia for 38 years. He is a gentle man who has learned, over decades, that the path of least resistance runs directly through agreement with whatever Sylvia has already decided. He does not challenge her. He does not question her. He hands her things when she reaches for them, and he laughs at her jokes and when something goes wrong in a way that originates with Sylvia. Warren looks at the middle distance and says nothing at all. I understood this dynamic before I married Leo. I told myself it was manageable. I was wrong about that, but I was wrong in the specific way that people are wrong when they are optimistic about something they cannot control. The first time I noticed what Sylvia was doing with Della, my daughter was 5 years old. We were at Sylvia's house for Tanner's birthday. Sylvia had bought gifts for Brody and Kit because, she said, it was hard for children to watch a parent get gifts and not have anything themselves. She had wrapped 2 small packages, one for Brody, one for Kit. She placed them on the gift table. She had not brought one for Della. When Della noticed she did not have a package, she looked at me and then looked at the table and then went back to playing with a wooden puzzle she had found in Sylvia's toy basket. She was 5. She filed it away the way 5-year-olds file things away, not in words but in a feeling she could not name yet. I noticed. I said nothing that day. I was new enough to this family to believe it had been an oversight. It was not an oversight. Over the next 2 years, it happened 11 more times. Over that time, I developed a discipline around Sylvia that I am not proud of, but that became necessary. I learned to watch without reacting. I learned to log things internally the way I log them at work, with dates and details and no emotional editorializing. 9 years of training in tracking what people do with documents they believe no one is reading. It transferred. What the log showed, once I had 2 years of entries, was a pattern too consistent to be accidental. Sylvia did not give to Della in small ways either. Not a piece of candy at Easter, not a sticker from the bowl she kept by the door, not a birthday card. Nothing that required attaching our daughter's name to a gesture of acknowledgement. It was total, sustained, precise in the way that accidents are not precise. The third time I raised it with Leo, he said something I have thought about many times since. He said he thought Sylvia just didn't connect with Della the way she connected with the boys. I said, Leo, Della is the only girl in this family and the only grandchild who came from me. He was quiet. He said he knew. I said, that is what it means. He did not disagree. He also did not do anything with it. That was the year I stopped raising it and started watching. Holiday gatherings where Brody and Kit came away with something and Della came away with nothing. Easter baskets that materialized on the counter with 2 names on them, neither of which was Della's. A fall birthday party for a Mercer cousin where Sylvia had coordinated gift bags for all the children and Della's was not among them. Each time, Sylvia had a version of an explanation that she offered smoothly, without being asked. Della has everything she needs at home. That sentence, she delivered it the same way each time, not apologetic, not embarrassed. Assured, as if it were a known fact about our household that exempted Della from receiving anything from the Mercer side of this family. As if she had done the math and concluded that our daughter was already provided for, and therefore did not require even the most basic gesture of inclusion. I raised it with Leo after the second time. He said he would talk to his mother. I do not know what that conversation looked like because I was not there for it. What I know is that the pattern did not stop. What I know is that after the third time I raised it with Leo, he said, she doesn't mean anything by it. That's just how she is. I looked at him for a long moment and I said, I understand. I did not say what I understood. What I understood was that I was alone on this particular issue, that the woman who had decided my daughter was worth less than her other grandchildren was going to continue deciding that, and the man I married was not yet ready to say so clearly to his mother, and I was going to have to carry the weight of watching it happen until something changed. I did not know then what was going to change everything. That came from a direction I did not expect. If you've ever watched someone you love be left with nothing while the room pretended not to notice, comment left with nothing below and subscribe to Calm Life Stories. Agnes Mercer was Leo's paternal grandmother. She was 84 years old and she had outlasted 2 of her children, and the original version of herself she had been in her 30s. By the time I knew her, she was small and sharp and entirely without patience for the performance of politeness. She said what she thought. She meant what she said. And she watched Sylvia the way an old woman watches a thing she has been watching for decades and has long since formed a full opinion about. Agnes came to Della's 6th birthday party. She sat in the chair closest to the door because her hip had been bad since the previous winter, and she watched the afternoon unfold, and at some point she watched Sylvia move through the room handing things to Brody and Kit and stepping past Della as if Della were furniture. I was cutting cake at the counter. I did not see Agnes's face when it happened. I only know what Agnes told me afterward. She found me in the kitchen while I was washing the serving knife. She put her hand on my arm and she said, I see what she does to that little girl. I kept washing the knife. I know you do, I said. Leo knows too, she said. He's working on it. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I have an appointment next week with an attorney. I want you to know in case it matters later. I looked at her. Agnes, just in case, she said. That's all I'm saying. She died 11 weeks later. A stroke, fast, in the early morning. She was gone before the hospital could call anyone who mattered. Leo cried in a way I had not seen him cry, and I held him, and I thought about what she had said in my kitchen, about the appointment, about it mattering later. I did not say anything to Leo about it then. It was not the right moment, and I did not know yet whether it was true. 3 days after Agnes's funeral, my firm received a registered package. Inside was a certified copy of Agnes Mercer's revised will, notarized 6 weeks before her death, with a handwritten note attached that said only, for Ivy. Keep this safe, you'll know when. I read it twice. I locked it in my desk drawer. I did not tell Leo. Not yet. I needed to understand what I was holding before I decided what to do with it. What I was holding was this. Agnes had quietly, without telling Sylvia, rewritten her will to divide her estate equally between Leo and Tanner. Her previous will had reflected the version Sylvia had managed, where Tanner's family received 70% and Leo's family received 30%. Ostensibly because Tanner had more needs, Agnes had never fully believed this framing. Near the end of her life, she had believed it even less. So, she had fixed it, and she had made sure the corrected version landed somewhere Sylvia could not intercept it. But here's what I did not know yet. Sylvia had been telling Leo a different story about the will entirely. I need to tell you about the phone call that moved me from watching to acting. It was a Tuesday in late September, 3 weeks before Sylvia's birthday dinner. I was at my desk when my phone lit up with a number I recognized as Della's school. I answered. It was Della's teacher, a woman named Mrs. Paulson, who I had met twice and who chose her words carefully. The kind of teacher who has learned exactly how to tell a parent something difficult without making it sound like an accusation. She said Della had been in an incident at recess, not a fight, not a behavioral issue. One of the girls in her class had been talking about her grandmother's house, and Della had said something that Mrs. Paulson thought I should know about. She said Della had told the other girl, plainly, without distress, as if stating a known fact, "Grandmas don't like me." The other girl had apparently said, "What do you mean?" And Della had said, "I just mean not all grandmas are the same. Some grandmas don't like you that much." Mrs. Paulson said she had sat with Della afterward and asked her about it. Della had been calm. She had said it wasn't sad, she just knew it was true. She said she didn't do anything wrong, she had just noticed. I thanked Mrs. Paulson. I put the phone down. I sat at my desk for a long time without moving. 7 years old. She had been carrying it for 2 years, quietly, without telling me, and she had metabolized it into a fact about the world. A rule she had extracted from enough repetitions that she no longer questioned it. Grandmas don't like me. Not Grandma Sylvia doesn't like me. All grandmas. She had overgeneralized from a specific cruelty into a belief about herself and what she should expect from the category of people who were supposed to love her unconditionally. That night I opened my desk drawer and I took out Agnes's certified will and I read it one more time. Then I called Leo and I told him to come home early because we needed to talk about something I had been holding for 3 months. He came home. I told him everything. I watched his face go through 4 or 5 different things in the space of 10 minutes. Then I put the will on the table between us and said, "Your mother has been telling you 15%. The number here is 50. He read it twice. He put it down. He said, "Why didn't you tell me before?" I said, "Because I needed to know if she would stop on her own. I needed to give the situation a chance to correct itself." He said, "Did it?" "Della's teacher called me today," I said. He looked at me. He looked at the will. He said, "What do we do?" I said, "We go to her birthday dinner, and we bring this with us." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Okay, I found out in September, 6 weeks before the birthday dinner, when Leo came home from lunch with his mother and he was quiet in a particular way that meant something had happened that he was not sure how to tell me. I sat down at the kitchen table. What did she say?" He sat across from me. He put his hands flat on the table. "She told me about Agnes's will," he said. "She said Agnes updated it before she died. She said, 'I'm getting 15%. I looked at him. 15, she said Agnes felt Tanner had greater financial need. She said it was Agnes's decision and we need to respect it. He paused. I believe her. I mean, Agnes did always lean toward Tanner. I've known that my whole life. I was quiet. I was running numbers in my head the way I run numbers at work, checking columns against each other to find the row that doesn't reconcile. "Leo," I said carefully. "Did she show you the document?" She said she has it. "Did she show it to you?" He stopped. "No, I didn't ask." I did not say anything else that night. I waited until Leo was asleep, and I went to my desk, and I opened the drawer, and I took out the certified copy Agnes had sent me, and I read it again from the beginning. 50% to Leo's family, 50% to Tanner's, clear language, no ambiguity. Notarized, filed with the county probate court 6 weeks before Agnes's death. The number Leo's mother had told him was 15%. The number in the actual will was 50. The gap between those two numbers was not a misunderstanding. Someone had constructed an alternate story about a dead woman's last wishes and delivered that story to her grandson as fact. And that someone had been collecting the benefit of that story for 3 months while Leo accepted a number that was not real. What I understood, sitting in the dark with that document in my lap, was that Sylvia had not made a mistake. She had made a decision. She had taken the amount Agnes had assigned to Leo's family, cut it by more than half, invented a version of Agnes's final wishes that did not exist, and delivered that invented version to her own son with the confidence of someone who had never expected to be caught. And she had been correct to expect that, because the only way to catch her was to have the original document, and the only way to have the original document was to be the person Agnes had trusted enough to mail it to. Agnes had seen Sylvia clearly for longer than anyone else in this family had been willing to. She had watched what Sylvia did at every table, who she included and who she looked past. She had watched it for years. And in the last months of her life, when she understood what she still had power over, she had used it. She had sat in an attorney's office and signed her name to a document that said Leo's family and Tanner's family were equal. Then, she had mailed a copy to the only person in Leo's life who would know what to do with it. I closed the drawer. I sat in the dark for a while. Then, I thought about Della's empty placemat at every family dinner for 2 years. I thought about the gift bags that materialized with 2 names on them and never a third. I thought about Della has everything she needs at home, delivered every time with the same assured smoothness, the same total absence of embarrassment. The math was not complicated once I looked at it whole. If Leo believed his family was receiving a smaller inheritance, he would feel less secure, less equal to his brother, less likely to push back against decisions Sylvia made about money or family resources. A financially uncertain Leo was a more controllable Leo, and the best way to keep Leo uncertain was to make sure he never looked at the actual document. I had the actual document. I had been holding it for 3 months, and Sylvia had just, unknowingly, told me exactly when to use it. Stay with me, because the next part is what you have been waiting for. Sylvia's birthday dinner was on the 3rd Saturday of October. It was a cold evening, the first real cold snap of the fall, and the house on Birch Street smelled like something Ashlyn had baked in the afternoon. 14 people around the extended table, Leo and I and Della, Tanner and Ashlyn and their boys. Warren at the head of the table, doing his characteristic impression of a man with no opinions. Sylvia's sister Gail, who had driven in from Appleton and who I had never trusted because she had Sylvia's eyes and Sylvia's habit of saying, "I'm just worried about you," in the tone that means she is pleased about something. 2 neighbors from next door, the Holloways, who had been invited because Sylvia liked being seen as the kind of person who includes the neighborhood. Their kids were 8 and 5. Della sat between Leo and me on the bench along the left side of the table. She had worn her navy dress with a white collar, the one she picked herself. Her hair was in 2 braids. She was well-behaved and quiet in the way she always was at Mercer family events, a quietness I had long since stopped reading as comfort and started reading as a learned response to environments where drawing attention to yourself produced nothing good. Dinner went as these dinners always went. Sylvia performed graciousness at the head of the table. Warren poured wine and said little. Tanner and Ashlyn made the noises of a couple who have been coached by the same person on how to present at family events: agreeable, reflective, strategically warm. Brody and Kit ate quickly and asked to be excused. Della ate slowly and watched the room. After the main dishes were cleared, Sylvia stood up. She had a stack of wrapped boxes on the sideboard that she had been rearranging throughout the meal, picking them up and putting them down and straightening them, hands busy the entire evening in that particular way her hands got when her mind was moving. Before cake, she said, with the warmth she deployed in public, I wanted to give something to the children. Because I love having a table full of young people. She picked up the first box and handed it to Brody. He said thank you and started pulling the ribbon. She picked up the second box and handed it to Kit. She picked up the third box and handed it to the Holloway boy, the 8-year-old, who looked surprised and said thank you twice. She picked up the fourth box and handed it to the Holloway girl, 5 years old, who had been at this house exactly once in her life. She set her hands down. The sideboard was empty. Della was sitting 2 feet from me with her hands in her lap. She looked at the boxes the other children were opening. She looked at the empty sideboard. She looked down at her placemat. She did not say a single word. I have worked in estate law for 9 years. I read documents about loss every day. I have sat across from clients whose families did things to them that required multiple pages of legal language to describe. I am not a person who cries easily, and I am not a person who acts on emotion before I have thought clearly about what the situation requires. But I looked at my daughter, looking at that empty placemat, and something in me went very still and very certain. This was not an oversight. This had never been an oversight. The neighbors' children had boxes, and my daughter did not, and we were all sitting in a room together, and every adult at that table knew what they were watching. Sylvia sat back down. She reached for her wine glass. She said, to no one in particular, Della has everything she needs at home. There it was. The sentence, delivered to the room like a verdict. I set my fork down. And then Leo stood up. He did not say anything immediately. He stood up slowly, the way he does when something is fully decided in him, and he reached into the inside pocket of his jacket, and he set a plain white envelope on the cake table next to his mother's birthday cake. He had brought it from home. I had given it to him the night before and told him what it was. He had read it alone at the kitchen table for a long time before he said anything at all. This gift, Leo said, and his voice was level. The level that was not calm but something adjacent to it, something that has run out of patience but refused to perform it, is for all of you. Sylvia looked at the envelope. Her hand went still on her wine glass. Leo, Warren said. The name came out low and careful. Let him finish, I said. I did not look at Sylvia. I was watching Della, who had lifted her eyes from her placemat for the first time and was watching her father. Leo picked up the envelope and opened it and took out 3 pages and placed them on the table. He did not hand them to his mother. He laid them flat where everyone at the table could see them. This is Grandma Agnes's real will, he said. Notarized 6 weeks before she died, filed with the county probate court. The copy Ivy's firm received directly from Agnes herself before Agnes died, before any of us knew to ask for it. Sylvia's face did something I had not seen it do in 4 years. It did not collapse. It reassembled. Very quickly, very deliberately, the way a person reassembles when they understand that the room has changed and they need to change with it. That is not the current document, she said. Agnes revised again after that. I have the final version. Show it to us, Leo said. Silence. You've had 3 months, he said. You told me I was getting 15%. You sat across from me at lunch in September, and you told me my grandmother left me 15% of her estate. You looked me in the face and said that. He pointed at the 3 pages on the table. The number in here is 50. Leo, Sylvia's voice shifted. It took on the particular tone she used when she needed to perform patience with someone being unreasonable. This is my birthday dinner. I don't know where you got that document or what you think it means, but this is not the time or the place to make accusations. I'm not making accusations, Leo said. I'm asking a question. Show me the document you told me about, the one that says 15%. Show it to me tonight, and I'll drop this entire conversation. She looked at Warren. He looked at the tablecloth. Warren, she said, sharper now. Tell him. Warren did not look up. Sylvia, he said, just show him the document. She looked at her husband for a long moment. Then she turned back to Leo, and something shifted in her face, and what came out from underneath the managed version was the voice I had suspected was there for 4 years. You want to do this here, she said, in front of everyone, in front of the children, on my birthday. After everything this family has done for you, after every holiday dinner I cooked, every loan I never asked repaid, every time I stepped in and handled something Ivy couldn't manage because she has never understood how this family works, and she never will. Her voice was precise and cold and entirely controlled. You want to stand up at my table with a document your wife pulled from a filing cabinet and accuse me of lying to my own son. My own son. Leo, I have given 31 years to this family. I planned every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every birthday dinner you ever sat at. And this is what I get. A piece of paper. On my birthday. In front of my neighbors. She paused. She looked at me then, directly, for the first time all evening. This is what she wanted, Sylvia said. This is what she has been building toward since she married you. She has never fit into this family. She never tried. She came in here with her paralegal job and her opinions and her daughter, who she has apparently decided is some kind of victim. And she has been undermining me in my own house from the beginning. And now she found a document, and she is very pleased with herself, and she is going to use my dead mother-in-law's name to do it. She looked back at Leo. Is that the kind of wife you chose? Because I raised you to expect better than someone who waits 3 months and picks my birthday to blow up this family. The room was absolutely still. Brody and Kit had stopped unwrapping their boxes. The Holloway parents were looking at the door. Gail was very carefully looking at her hands. Tanner was looking at Ashlyn. Ashlyn was looking at the floor. The only one still looking at Leo was Della. Brody and Kit had stopped unwrapping their boxes. The Holloway parents were looking at the door. Gail was looking at her hands. Tanner was looking at Ashlyn. Ashlyn was looking at the floor. The only one still looking at Leo was Della. You have given your life to this family, Leo said. I know that. I believe you believe that. But you looked me in the face and told me my grandmother left me 15% and the number in this document is 50. And the reason you told me 15 instead of 50 is that you needed me to feel like I was the lesser son, so I would keep behaving like one. You needed me smaller than Tanner, easier to manage, less likely to push back on anything you decided. He looked at her steadily. And you made sure Ivy felt like she didn't belong here so that if she ever found something, nobody at this table would believe her. That is not what happened. Then show me the document. Gail spoke then. She had said nothing for 10 minutes. She was at the far end of the table with her hands folded and something in her face that looked like it had been waiting a long time for permission to come out. Agnes told me, Gail said. She was looking at Sylvia. She told me last summer what she was doing and why. She said she was fixing something before she ran out of time. I told her you would find a way around it. She paused. She said she had a plan. Gail looked at me. I guess she did. Sylvia looked at her sister. Gail, don't, Gail said. Not tonight, Sylvia, just don't. She had nothing to show him, that was the whole of it. There was no document. There had never been a document. There was only the story she had told, smoothly, with the confidence of someone who believed Leo would never look for the actual paperwork, never have access to the original, Never have a wife who worked in estate law and whose firm had received a certified copy from a dying woman who had seen exactly this coming and planned accordingly. I did this for Tanner, she said finally. Her voice had changed again, lower now, as if she were choosing to explain something she had not intended to explain. Tanner has 2 children. He has a mortgage. He had that business that failed. Agnes never understood what he needed. She never saw what it cost him to keep up with you, and I was fixing a mistake that Agnes made. And you would have understood that if you weren't so determined to see the worst in me. Leo looked at his mother for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was very quiet. She needed one thing from you, he said. Della, 1 box. You gave boxes to strangers and you gave my daughter nothing, and then you said she has everything she needs at home. He looked at Sylvia. She is 7 years old. What does a 7-year-old have to do with an inheritance? Sylvia said nothing. Nothing, Leo said. She had nothing to do with it. You did it because Ivy is the one who would find the document if anyone was going to find it, and you needed Ivy to be the outsider. You needed Della to be the outsider, because outsiders don't have standing at the table. The room did not react. No one said a word. The candles on the birthday cake had been burning for 20 minutes, and the wax was running. I reached into my own bag then. I had brought one more document. I set it on the table next to the 3 pages Leo had placed there. This is a record of the file Sylvia's name does not appear on, I said. Agnes filed the will with the county court directly. She named the executor as a third party, not Sylvia, not Warren. The estate is not Sylvia's to manage. The probate process begins with the court, not with this family. On Monday morning, my firm will submit the certified copy we received and initiate the process. Gail made a sound. Not a word, just a sound. Ashlyn's hand went to Tanner's arm. Tanner looked at Leo and then looked at the table. You planned this, Sylvia said. Her voice had gone flat. The performance was gone. What was left was something older and harder and entirely without the warmth she had built her family identity on. You brought that to my birthday dinner on purpose. You sat at my table and you planned this. Yes, I said. I planned it the day Della came home from school and told me that her teacher had called about an incident. Della had told a classmate that grandmas don't like her. 7 years old. She thought it was something about her. She had been carrying that for 2 years, and she thought it was because of something she was. I did not look at Sylvia after I said that. I looked at Della. Della was watching me from her end of the bench with those dark eyes that see everything and process it quietly and file it somewhere she can find it later. It was never about her, I said to Della, to the room, to whoever needed to hear it. It was never about her at all. If you've ever had to explain to your child that they were left with nothing because of something that had nothing to do with them, comment left with nothing below. Subscribe to Calm Life Stories and stay with me, because this is not where it ends. The room broke apart slowly. The Holloways left first, quietly, with their children and their gift boxes and their complete understanding that they had witnessed something they had not been meant to witness. The neighbor woman paused at the door and looked back at me, and I saw something in her face that I read as recognition, and then she was gone. Gail left without speaking to anyone. She collected her coat from the rack by the door, and she put it on, and she walked out. She did not look at Sylvia. She did not say goodbye. I found that detail significant. Warren sat at the table for a long time after everyone else had stood up. He looked at the 3 pages Leo had placed there, and then he looked at his wife, and then he said, quietly, Sylvia, why didn't you just show him the document? She said nothing. Because there isn't one, Warren said. He said it without anger. Without anything, really, just a man arriving, very late at a fact he had probably known was coming for longer than he'd admitted to himself. He stood up, slowly, and he walked to the kitchen, and I heard the sound of him running water at the sink. Tanner stayed. Tanner sat at the table after the room had cleared, and he looked at his brother and he said, "Leo, I didn't know." Leo looked at him. "I knew she favored me," Tanner said. "I've always known that. I didn't know she was doing anything with the will. I didn't know what she told you." He stopped. "I'm sorry." Leo was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I know." That was all they said that night. But I noticed that Tanner, before he and Ashlyn gathered their boys and their coats, put his hand briefly on Della's shoulder and said, "Happy almost Halloween, kiddo." Della looked up at him and said, "Thank you." She had impeccable manners for someone who had just sat through the most difficult dinner of her 7-year life. We drove home in the dark. Della sat in the back seat and looked out the window at the streetlights. After a while she said, "Dad, why did you put the envelope on the table?" Leo adjusted the mirror so he could see her. "Because something wasn't right," he said, "and I wanted everyone to know what was actually true." She thought about that for a moment. Did Grandma know it wasn't right? Leo and I looked at each other. "Yes," he said, "she knew." Della looked back out the window. "Okay," she said, and she said nothing else for the rest of the drive. Here is what happened after. The probate process opened on Monday morning. Because Agnes had filed the will with the county court directly and named an independent executor, Sylvia had no legal mechanism to contest it. Her attorney sent 2 letters in the first 3 weeks. My firm's attorney responded to both. The letters stopped. The will stood. Leo's share of Agnes's estate was 50%, same as Tanner's. The number that had been 15 became 50 in the space of a certified document and a birthday dinner. Sylvia called Leo 4 times in the first month. He answered twice. I do not know the full content of those calls because he did not share it and I did not ask. What he told me was that she did not apologize. What she offered instead was a version of events in which she had been trying to protect the family from a conflict, in which her intentions had been good even if her methods had been wrong, in which everyone needed to take a step back and remember what mattered. Leo told her he would call her when he was ready. He has not called her back yet. That was 8 months ago. Warren called once. He called on a Sunday evening, and Leo answered, and they talked for 40 minutes. I do not know what was said. I know that after, Leo came and sat next to me on the couch and leaned back and stared at the ceiling for a while and then said, "My dad knew something was off with the numbers. He didn't push it because it would have meant a fight." He paused. "He's sorry." He said he's sorry. "What did you say?" I said, I know. Tanner reached out through Ashlyn. Ashlyn texted me 3 weeks after the dinner and said that Tanner wanted Leo to know he was going to make it right regarding any gifts his boys had received that had not included Della. She said he wanted to start over if we would let him. I showed Leo the text. He said he needed more time. I texted Ashlyn back and said we appreciated that and we would be in touch. Gail sent a card. A plain card, no pre-printed sentiment, just her handwriting. I've watched Sylvia do this for 40 years. I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't. I put the card in the same drawer where I had kept Agnes's will for 3 months. I kept one thing from Agnes's registered package. Tucked behind the 3 pages of the certified will, there had been an envelope addressed to Della in Agnes's handwriting. A birthday card. Della's birthday had been in August. Agnes had died in July. She had written the card before she died and sealed it and tucked it behind the legal documents, and somehow she had known it would take until October for any of this to come out. I have not opened it. It is Della's card, and Della will read it when she is old enough to understand what it means that a woman she barely knew saw her being left out and decided to make sure she was not forgotten by the only document she still had power over. I put the card on Della's shelf in her room, propped against her bookend, where she can see it every morning. She asked me once what it was. I told her it was a letter from Leo's grandmother, who had thought about her. Della said, "Did she know me?" A little, I said. She looked at the card for a moment. She still thought about me? She did, I said. She wanted you to know that. Della nodded once and went back to her book. She has her father's eyes and her own particular way of accepting things that are true and moving forward from them. I have been learning that skill from her. Tanner called Leo 6 weeks after the birthday dinner. Not a text, an actual call. Leo took it in the kitchen and I gave him the room. The call was 40 minutes. When Leo came out, he sat next to me and said Tanner was going to make sure we were included going forward and that he was going to talk to his mother. I said, "What did you tell him?" Leo said I told him it wasn't about him. It was about her. He paused. He said Tanner cried a little. I said I know. Leo looked at me. He said you knew? I said Tanner has always known which parent he was dealing with. He just didn't want to look at it directly. Leo was quiet for a while. Then he said, "That makes 2 of us." Sylvia's reputation in Harwick is a thing she had built carefully over many years. She was on 2 committees. She organized the church rummage sale. She was known as a generous woman, a woman who included people, a woman who opened her home. In the months after the birthday dinner, I became aware, through the ordinary channels of a small Wisconsin city in October turning into November, that things were different, that the Holloways had apparently talked as neighbors do, that Gail had apparently talked as sisters who have held something in for 40 years sometimes do when they finally stop. I did not orchestrate any of this. I want to be clear about that. I submitted the will on Monday morning and I did my job and I let the documents do what documents do, which is stay true when everything else is shifting. What I know is that the Rummage Sale Committee asked Sylvia to take a smaller role this past spring. What I know is that the birthday dinners, the holiday tables, the organized gatherings that Sylvia had used as the venue for her management of this family have not been organized in 8 months. The table she sat at the head of is quiet. The gift boxes have not been restacked and repositioned by her hands. The room she ran has not been run. I do not feel triumph about this. I want to be honest about what I feel. What I feel is something flatter and cleaner. I feel the way I feel when a probate case closes correctly, when the document that was supposed to say something is finally confirmed to say it, when the right people get what was always meant for them and the wrong people can no longer redirect the result. That is what happened. That is the whole of it. Della asked me a few weeks ago if we were going to see Grandma Sylvia for Thanksgiving. We were in the car. I kept my eyes on the road. "Not this year," I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Is it because of the birthday dinner?" "Partly," I said. "Because she didn't give me a box?" I thought about how to answer that. I thought about layer 4 of the betrayal, about the will and the 15% and the 3 months of constructed fiction. I thought about what a 7-year-old can carry and what she can't yet. Because of a lot of things, I said. But yes, that was part of it. And I want you to know that what she did had nothing to do with you. Not one part of it. Della looked out the window. She has a habit of doing that when she is processing something. Dad was really quiet after, she said, in the car. He was thinking, I said, about the envelope, about a lot of things. She looked at me. Was he sad? Yes, I said. A little. She nodded. Then she said, I'm glad he stood up. I looked at her in the mirror. Me too. She went back to the window. 7 years old, quiet as a held breath, with 2 braids and her navy dress and the particular gift of knowing what matters without being told it in language she can fully parse yet. She is the best thing in a story that had some very dark chapters. She has no idea what she cost Sylvia. She should never have to. Cruelty doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it looks like a gift table with everyone else's name on it. Sometimes it looks like a sentence delivered smoothly to a room full of people who say nothing. Sometimes it looks like a number that is smaller than the real one, delivered to someone who trusted you to tell the truth. The real number was always 50. The real will was always in my desk drawer. The room that froze in October had been running on a story that wasn't true, and the only thing it took to end it was one envelope, one table, and one man who finally stood up. What Della said on the drive home stayed with me for a long time after. She said, "I'm glad he stood up. Not I'm glad we have more money now, or I'm glad Grandma got in trouble." She didn't know about any of that, not really, not in the way adults know things. What she knew was that her father had stood up. That was the part that mattered to her. That was the whole of it from where she was sitting. I have worked in estate law for 9 years. I have read hundreds of documents that families leave behind. Wills, trusts, amendments, revocations, the whole paper architecture of who mattered and who didn't, who got the house and who got the explanation. What I have learned from reading those documents is that what people put in writing at the end of their lives is usually the truest thing they ever said. All the management, all the performance, all the careful presentation falls away when someone knows they are running out of time. What's left is the truth. Agnes knew the truth about Sylvia. She knew it for years. And she made one last document, signed her name, and sent it to the right person. The gift table with everyone else's name on it. The boxes for strangers. The sentence delivered to a room like a verdict. None of it was accidental. None of it was incidental. It was a structure built to keep certain people smaller and certain people larger. And it worked for years because nobody looked at the paperwork. We looked at the paperwork. Comment left with nothing if this story reached you. Subscribe to Calm Life Stories and share this with someone who needed to see that the truth has a way of staying true even when someone else is managing the story. I will see you in the next one.